Hi, my name is Kevin McDonald, and I'm declaring my independence. Independence from what? Why, negative thoughts and energy, of course. Chief among them, hate, division, and fear. You see, I know that we're all one, and together we can solve any problem, save our planet and each other. Please, join me as we come together as one and choose a better way to be. So now, let's begin with my independence report. And welcome to my Independence Report. It's Wednesday. Eric Hall, the Transient, is here. How are you, Eric?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm great. I'm wearing your hat. I like it.
Thank you. Oh, I wondered where I left that. Oh, it looks good on you.
Well, I am so glad. It's so great to have you here again, because we got lots to talk about. A couple things. First of all, I know that you are so many people that appear on this channel, Nastasha for one, Coriel for another. They just as soon stay away from politics. They just as soon stay away from what's happening in the world today, because if it doesn't, necessarily affect them directly, they feel like it provides too much negative energy, and which it does at times. But I follow the philosophy that we need those of us that need to know stuff like that. It's important that we know so that we can act responsibly. What do you think about that?
With all due respect to their views on life, because what they do is very valuable to the human experience. And probably I feel that what they do for people, they need to separate themselves from that types of energy. So I understand what they're saying. But what I will say about politics is that it's very difficult, impossible, to separate politics from social norms, from social interactions. And this week, for example, is significant because just as necessity is the mother of invention, our better angels are born out of necessity. In other words, humans, as awful as we get, and disgusting as we get, narcissistic as we get, we also have the ability to become better people, as we have in this past year. With we have to take some time and acknowledge what Black Lives Matter has done over the past year.
I agree.
Because I think they've been significant, not only in bringing awareness into, the injustice that has been happening to so many, not just Black lives, but brown lives and, lives in general, the injustices that have been perpetuated on human beings in general, but particularly Black lives, because the proportion of violence that's put on Black lives by our systemic processes, not just law, but in our voting process and our spiritual process. I mean, like Brown, you heard about Brown University this week, right?
Remind me.
Well, this is rather significant, and this is worth a discussion, or maybe another time. They're dropping their classics studies, literary studies.
Why would they do that?
Well, because it's European-based.
Oh, okay.
Which is a white history. And this is where it gets difficult because, and I say this with, I want to be clear, because white history is difficult to separate out of American history. You can't separate it out of American history. You can't separate white history out of European history. You can say that it's been running the forefront because it's been economically successful in the way of also in producing new technologies, which we're going to talk about pretty soon. But it's It's been leading the way in invention and discovery and all these things. But we haven't been solely responsible for this. And this is where the narcissism of white society is so apparent, because brown and blacks and yellows and the native cultures have all contributed. And it's been kind of brushed aside. And I don't know what Brown University or Howard University's concept of dropping the classics, but this is a bit of, they're getting some pushback, not only by their own students, but Harvard and Yale, and saying, that's a bad idea. You can't do this. And so even people of color are pushing back and saying, don't do this. You got to learn about these great stories that we all have to learn, because a lot of these great stories, the Iliad and what have you, even Tom Sawyer with all of those horrible words in it, the N words and other racial slurs, these are important parts of our history. And this is how people talked back then. We have to know this and understand what happened to us in the past to move forward.
No, I couldn't agree more.
So that's part of the discussion. And this is how it ties into what's happening this week. And this is why we owe Black Lives Matter so much, because they're moving us forward.
I want to throw the Me Too movement in on that too, because we'll talk about that because in one respect we have Black Lives Matter, and we're seeing young kids. Yesterday or the day before, a 13-year-old boy with his hands up is shot and killed. Somebody else was in his car, was shot and killed. So we're seeing that. That's very open. But there's the Me Too movement is very dark, and it's very quiet, and it's in behind closed doors of how people are treating women and stuff. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well. So keep going.
I'm glad you did, because there's this self-powering movement that's come on over the past couple of years. And you know what? We talk about the birth of better angels and the necessity for birthing better angels. So we have to take a nod to what causes the necessity.
Bad angels.
Bad angels, which is obviously, the prior administration, which is still happening with Taylor Greene there, and this nightmare that's going on with Gates.
I could not believe that there was actually on the news. It was like CNN that she wants to create an Anglo-Saxon party or a movement of. And now I don't know about you, but I saw Braveheart. And there weren't any black people in Braveheart.
No, but they did have some Irish people that were, the black people of the white people.
That's the potato eaters of that day. Yeah, they were. But all of those, it's Anglo-Saxons basically is code for white people.
Yeah, and she's had to walk that back because she got a lot of pushback from some of the Republicans. And now she's just claiming that, some staff member did a draft.
I never said that.
Exactly. That's what she's saying. Now
got me. I don't know where that came from. You wrote it.
Anglo-Saxon. I'm not even familiar with the word.
Yeah. Yes. So continue on. You're making good points.
So Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matter, I think was the birth of the better angels that marched in to the deeper part of society, to the greater part of society, and not only brought us, and Stacey Adams, who is definitely one of the heroes, one of the great people in our democracy.
And she's in Georgia, from Georgia.
And she's in Georgia. And yep. I think was, hugely responsible for opening the doors of Georgia. That brought in the Democrats and also with Black Lives Matter, I think they're very largely responsible for helping getting Biden and Harris elected, because they opened the doors to black people voting. getting them activated. So they got people off the ground, got people motivated. They went out and they got voted. The churches were involved to get out and vote. And now we've got Biden, Harris, and people are motivated. We've got momentum for better angels, for better things to happen in our world. And, look what happened. A police officer that committed murder, 9 minutes and 48 seconds, 9 minutes, something like
an eternity.
Damn.
An eternity have you watched that from beginning to end?
I did not.
I did at one time because I couldn't believe that this was actually happening in the United States. Because when he, at one point, Mr. Floyd was on the ground with the man, the murderer, his a knee on his neck, and he was calling for his mother. It's like that can't be happening in the United States of America. We can't be that. We can't be that callous. That a policeman and not only that, there were 4 policemen on the scene, and so this guy was doing that, and there were guys standing there watching him do that. It was horrific. It was the most, and but your point is really well taken, because I love it, because times are changing, and you know why times are changing? The video camera.
That's right.
Because if that hadn't been, there was a 17-year-old girl she is responsible for that video, and from beginning to end. And she testified, and she was crying on the stand because she felt so badly that she had not done anything more to interrupt it and to save Mr. Floyd's life. And there were other people that were in the same way. But what do you do? I mean, if you were confronted with that situation, what would you do?
It's what can you do?
I don't know.
Because you've seen this before, and 4 police officers standing there watching it, and they're holding the crowd at bay. Maybe not physically, but they're watching the crowd. And if you move against that police officer, he's going to zap you with that taser, and the police officers are going to move in and beat you and pin you down, even though you have the moral duty to, well, I shouldn't say moral duty. Yeah, you have the moral duty, the moral right to step in and say, hey, this is out of hand. But you physically cannot, because you're facing what is basically soldiers that have been trained to do exactly what they have. And this is the problem. This is why they're talking about restructuring the police. And this is where Democrats are so bad at messaging because they say defund the police.
That's not what they mean.
They mean restructure. They should have said restructure from the beginning. And this would have, saved all kinds of trouble. Probably would have helped the Black Lives Movement early on if they just said, we need to restructure the police. Because defund the police sounds like mayhem, like you want to put out police departments and not have police departments. And Republicans know that's not what we mean. But politically, that's how they're going to act.
What we really mean is that we want to take we want to change the dynamic of when are the police called and why are they sent someplace when it may not be appropriate for them to be their first responders. They almost need to create a different type, somebody that has the ability, if there is a dangerous situation, to act, but has a more of a complete understanding of what's going on with people, so that we don't the guy with the gun isn't the first guy there.
That's right. I mean, you and I saw people on the bus all the time or in the streets all the time. You don't need force. You need somebody that can understand gibberish. And and there's people out there that understand gibberish can help the gibberish. our our police officers, our policing started in the Wild West, and it started with policing our slaves.
Yes.
And it's been built and inherent in policing slaves. So, of course, it's violent and a hard pushback and zero tolerance.
I was at on the Soto busway, and I was it was right there at Spokane Street, and the bus was stopped, and a cop pulls up on the other side. There's a couple of black kids there, a boy and a girl, as I recall, and the guy steps out of his vehicle and he says, "Come here." So the young man starts walking towards him and gets into the street, and then the policeman says, "Get out of the street!" All right, now wait. You told me that you wanted me to come to you. Now to come to you, I have to go get in the street, and now you're telling me to not get in the street, and you're yelling at me for what? Would you make up your damn mind? What am I so? What was that kid supposed to do to comply completely? When the instructions, I didn't get the instructions, and I was just sitting there. It had nothing to do with me. So, and that's happening a lot. But I'm so glad that you brought this up, Eric, because I think that overall we are entering into a new time, and that time is in Georgia, a red state for sure, forever. And the reason it was a red state is because they had figured out a way to keep people from voting. Those people that had never voted before were not energized because they didn't think it would ever happen. That's right. They didn't think that their vote made a difference because people had been told that for 100 years, 150 years. Your vote doesn't, and if you vote the wrong way, you could end up hanging in a tree from the Jim Crow era. And so it wasn't, but then a miracle happened and everybody got energized. And when they got energized, they voted. And when they voted, the people that they wanted to win won. And so now they can see that they can make a difference, that the power in their vote makes a difference. And so now the Republicans and other conservatives are coming back saying, you know what? I think it's a damn shame that we vote on Sundays. So let's make a law that we're not going to vote on Sundays anymore. We've been voting on Sundays for 100 years. And now suddenly it's because the church, the black churches in Georgia have gotten together and they said, all right, we're going to get us some buses and we are going to have adventures to go to vote. That's what we're going to do. And so now we're saying the conservative, no, we don't think you should be voting. And they've even said it out loud.
I saw that. Was it a congressperson?
Yes.
It was the lady. Yeah. I don't recall her name. It was disgusting. They weaponize the Bible anytime they think they can. They will weaponize the Bible.
And so that they thought, no, we should not be voting on Sundays. We should not have so many voting voting. It's the Sabbath. And we should have fewer voting places and stuff like that because they want to control. But it scared the hell out of them that when people got energized and motivated, they came out and voted. What was it? 180 million people, the most of all time, voted for the president of the United States.
Yes.
And 173 voted for the other guy, which is a story that we're going to have to talk about at one point. It's like half of our country's nuts, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason for that, though, but we can talk about that at another time. I think economics is, economics is what do they say about an attractive girlfriend?
I don't know if this is true or not, but you don't want to have an attractive girlfriend. You want to have an ugly girlfriend, because if you have an ugly girlfriend and she leaves you, you don't really care. If she's beautiful and she leaves you, that's a heartbreaking thing.
That's the heartbreaking thing. Her, you know, it's a trophy wife is what the economics of it is, and it's all. Well, the Republicans are far better at messaging than the Democrats.
That's very true. But if you want to see a trophy wife,
yeah,
you hold on. Hey, honey, come here.
Yay.
Oh, wait, that's the picture that's on the wall. I got confused.
I see. Well, at least it's on the wall and not on the ceiling.
How do you know I haven't got one there too?
Oh,
okay. No, no, that's another, right. That's another bad story. Have you ever
had one on the ceiling?
Have you ever, speaking of things on the ceiling, have you ever been to Vegas and you get into a really nice suite and it's a king size bed and it's on a pedestal and you've got a little kitchenette there and you got a full living room and you got a 75-inch TV and all that, and then you go get into bed and you look up and there's a mirror. It's a full length mirror. It covers the entire length and width of the bed. And then you wake up in the morning and look up, and it's scary when that happens.
I know. What the hell? You never want to see yourself having, you just don't. Not me, anyway. It kind of ruins it.
And today, the sponsor of the hour is brought to us by Paulette, who's going to keep us on the straight and narrow, which is very important for a couple of old dudes like us. It's so I will try and behave, Paulette. I'm sorry, but getting back to Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement, I think that because they are now seeing some victories. The response, did you watch the response that as the verdict was being read of what these people that were all gathered around each other, what they were doing and what they were saying, and they were jumping up and down, and that made tears come to my eyes.
Made my day, man. Yeah, that was with all due respect of the deceased, it was kind of beautiful. Really, at least people got to share something really wonderful. It created a beautiful moment and people got to rejoice. Black lives finally matter. There was an acknowledgement.
And they got the message.
They got the message.
And that's going to continue. I think it's not going to be a one-off thing. It's not going to be, it's going to be that people all over. Well, your native people, the Native Indian population, the last what has it been? 150, 175 years. From the time when there were literally millions of Native Americans across the country, the Creeks down in Florida, the Cherokees that were in the middle of the country, the Sioux, the Nez Perce, all of these tribes that populated this country and were systematically eliminated. And that's one of the things that they don't talk about in the history books nearly as much as they should, as how all of those people were killed and eliminated and died of starvation or of disease and that sort of thing. And it changed the entire it changed the dynamics of what was going on with those people, and it really was a shame, and they had no choice. Now the same thing isn't going to hold true with Black Lives Matter, because they're getting the fact that they're getting victories, they can win, so they're going to take care of that.
They're going to take care of that, and there is trickle down effects. Unlike trickle down economics, this will have trickle down effects.
Oh, I think so.
This will be inclusive. Yeah.
It will be, the power of the camera is going to be paramount. Do you remember, I was just dawned on me. Do you remember, a dozen years ago or so, they had the Arab Spring? Remember when they were talking about that?
The Arab Spring?
The Arab Spring. It was in the Middle East with when Mubarak was overthrown in Egypt, and Libya was overthrown. Gaddafi was overthrown, and because everybody got together on social media, on their phones, and
I do recall something about that.
And they got together and they were able to form and complete a movement virtually without having to. In the olden days, you had to go to a meeting, and then everybody go to a meeting, and then you'd all get together and you try and get more. Here, that's all digital. It's all online, and so people can get together and form. And that's what happened, I think, in the election this last time. Is that people got on their phones and said, "Mama, are you coming to vote? Let me come get you." And people took it seriously, and that's what's happening. What are you laughing about?
Because it reminds me of, was it Trump's first campaign rally that they put together this huge event at some stadium or some place, and they had like 60,000 tickets to sell or to reserve. They were free tickets.
This last election.
Yeah. And there are these young, millennials. Is that what they call this generation? The next generation? They went online and they reserved all these tickets, and Trump was, emotionally erect for all of this. This is great. This is America speaking. And he showed up and there was, maybe a couple hundred people in the audience. He was so pissed. His hair was just, his 12 hairs was hanging all over the place. And he just looked defeated.
Could you imagine what went through his mind? Because as what they done is they arranged this arena, and then they had an overflow arena that they put up these big TV screens and stuff, so that people, and they were expecting 20 to 30,000 people in the overflow.
That's right.
And then the arena was going to be packed, and he was flying in on Air Force One. Dum, 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 here it come. And they looked over the side, and there was nobody there.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. He was absolutely humiliated, and heads rolled that day, man. Heads rolled. And it wasn't long after that Giuliani was holding press conferences next to a porn shop.
I wonder if the significance of that was actually, if he caught on to, if he was that unaware, and his media people should be fired, because that was the worst. What do you call it? Analytics, not analytics. The worst. Paulette, help us here. The visual. The worst visualization of anything they could have done.
Man, it's not hard to check that stuff.
You wouldn't think.
No.
You wouldn't think, and
we all have Google Maps. I have Google Maps on my phone. I can go to that address right now and see the porn shop and see the landscape company there and go, Donnie, this is not a good idea.
and you wonder.
Actually, I would say, Don, this is a great idea, but.
Well, and you wonder if when that was going on, and you had the CNN news cameras there and MSNBC, and they were panning the area and stuff. And I wonder when they noticed that there was a porn shop in the background.
Seriously, how did Giuliani miss that?
Because he's an old fool at this point. I think I there was a time when 9/11 happened and he was America's mayor and stood up for law and order and all of that, but something happened to him over time.
I think you're right. I wonder how, because as much as it pains me to say this, he pretty sharp guy. At one time, he was obviously a sharp guy. Something happened.
Yeah, because something had to have happened. I don't know what. He bought into hook, line, and sinker the Trumpism that was out there. The Trump somehow. I don't understand it. I was watching something about QAnon again yesterday. Did you watch anything about those guys?
Not yet. Not recently. No.
Oh well, they're still active. They're still believing that the CNN guy he was doing an interview and he faced an impossible situation.
Uh-oh.
Now, you know Tom Hanks. You know who Tom Hanks is.
I've heard of him.
Yes, the actor.
Run. Oh, yeah, that guy.
Run for it. Run for it.
Run for it.
It's like a box of chocolate.
Shrimp salad, shrimp Creole, shrimp.
Grilled shrimp, baked shrimp.
Grilled shrimp.
Yep. And in any event.
2 hours later, that's about it.
So the CNN news guy was talking to somebody who was a QAnon follower, and one of their main premises is that there are celebrities and there are other people that are killing babies, taking their blood so that they can live longer. There's some particular thing in their blood. We're going to talk about health here in a minute, but there's something that's in their blood that supposedly, and when they extract it, it can help people live longer. And
of course.
And so the CNN guy goes, "So, do you believe that Tom Hanks is a pedophile?" And he said, "Well, can you prove he's not?" I've never met Tom Hanks. I have no idea who he is, but I know from his background and stuff that he has never had any trouble. He's never been involved with that. He said, "Well, how come he's famous then?" So maybe because he's a good actor. Maybe he's at the top of his craft, and no, it's because he eats children. So we're here to save the children from Tom Hanks. And the CNN guy was like, "There's no talking to these people. You can't. It's like that old saying. Hi, Eric. Are you still beating your wife?"
You just want to stab your head.
Yeah. So like, are you still beating your wife? It's like you can't win there, because if you say no, then that means you were, and if you say yes, then you still are. So that's one of those. And there are people that are in our little planet that are doing stuff like that, and now they've taken over. There's a group called Save the Children. It's been around. It's a nonprofit group that's been around for 100 years. They're now co-opting that brand and utilizing Save the Children, hashtag Save the Children, from the pedophiles that are Hillary Clinton is one of the pedophiles.
Is she still renting out that pizza place downstairs and cooking them in a pizza oven?
No, do you know that guy, that somebody went in there and trying to save the children, and they found out there was no basement?
Oh, there's no basement?
No.
How do we know they just didn't cover up the door?
Well, apparently not. But I don't know. They looked at the plans apparently, but there'd never been a basement there, and there was no basement there. Besides the fact that, can you imagine Hillary Clinton trying to run down a 13-year-old or a 7-year-old kid? That she'd never catch him. So, you know,
there is that.
that's right. She would wear out her pantsuit trying to save or trying to get the kids.
Or it would catch fire just from the friction. Shame on me. I feel bad. I'm sorry, Hillary.
He didn't mean it. He didn't.
I feel shame.
He didn't mean it. So anyways, I think it's been a good week, just like you.
You know, after hearing shit like that, you just feel stunned.
Well, then let's change subject, shall we?
Okay.
For two reasons. Number one, I believe that right now the federal government has got the word out that anybody who uses the term QAnon, the satellite starts moving back and forth. They go zeroing in on the radio waves of where it's coming from. And it's like, I didn't mean it. I didn't say that, really. So, but anyway, I wanted to get to, because last week we talked about UFOs, and it was pretty timely because suddenly more pictures have emerged, and there's a new device that's going into space that we're launching in the next little bit that is going to be able to pick up radio waves and that kind of. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you sent me something during the week that we need to explore.
See, mankind left to their own devices. Somebody really should be in charge here. And I don't know, who should be in charge, but obviously we're a little bit disorganized, and God help us, we are a creative species, and we have, how do you say, moments of brilliance. And for good or bad, we have moments of brilliance. And there is some fantastic people out there, absolutely brilliant. And we know, the big ones like Bezos and what's that guy from Tesla that has his own SpaceX, and those guys that actually, have his own space program. Who grows up and starts their own space program? Monk. What's it? Monk? What's his name? What's his name? Tesla?
I don't know.
I forget his name. I should know that.
Multi-billion-dollar rich guy who's putting stuff into space.
Yeah, and that's what he does for a hobby.
Wouldn't that be a nice hobby to have?
Wouldn't that be? That's a hobby. I have a telescope. That's my version of space right there. That's what I was able to achieve, is a telescope right there. That's as far into space. Yeah, that's an aquarium that I have to clean today. That's why I got the light off, because I'm sick of looking at it. But that's
the white thing next to it. Is that the water heater?
No, that's a telescope.
Holy crap, that's a big telescope.
Well, it's a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope.
Oh, very nice.
And
I don't know what that means, but very nice.
That telescope style has been around since Newton. Newton is the guy that invented that technology, and it's still working. Just a simple mirror and an eyepiece. And it's been around for hundreds of years, and there's no improving on it. On that style, you can get electronics and mirrors and get them smaller, but for the price, this is the best way to still reach the stars, and that's how I do it. But there's people out there that explore space for real, or they go down into submarines and make movies, But my version is to get a telescope. But anyway, so there are brilliant people out there that come up with wild things. And somebody that you probably haven't heard of is this a guy that runs the Pelling Lab.
The what?
Now, Pelling Lab. Now, Pelling is this bioengineer that has been started as a kid that started going through garbage like we all did as kids. We all went through the garbage.
Oh, sure, every day.
And
That's
we
where I
built
got my lunch.
and some of us built, robots, and some of us just went through the garbage to eat. But this guy would build robots out of parts, or he put stacked vegetables together. And he was cooking one day, and he looked at some asparagus as he was cutting the ends, and he noticed that you look at the end of an asparagus, and it looks like a spinal cord.
Okay, all right, I can see that.
And he said, I wonder if I can cure paralysis if I cut this up and use this as a base for cells to adhere to. And have those cells, they call it regenerative medicine challenge. So it's a healing of the interfacial zone between tissues is what he created. Now, this has been done through 3D printing. And the problem with 3D printing is that the 3D printing tissue is not alive matter. So by using vegetable tissues as a base, they can adhere our stem cells, which are not specialized, that will become specialized when they're attached to the body or done in specific ways, or the odds of the body rejecting these new body parts that are being grown is hugely reduced. So he has and he's found that this can be done with other body parts like the ear. In fact, he started with an ear. He found an apple and said, well, you cut this and it sort of looks like an apple. So his wife is a violin maker. So he said, can you carve an ear out of this apple? And she said, sure, honey. So she carved an ear that out of this apple. And she said, here you go. And he put some stem cells on this petri dish and grew a human ear. Said, thank you very much. Now, the ear worked, and he got the asparagus, and it turned out to be viable. And he practiced on some rats or mice, and they would go into the mice and they'd cut the spinal cord, and the mice would sort of drag their back feet, and it would take a couple of weeks before the mice could bring their feet up and start walking again. But it turned out that this asparagus spinal cord could work. And these mice now, after, a month, 6 weeks, are now walking around pretty much normal. And they expect to have a full recovery. So not only is he making spinal cords work again and making human ears, but he extrapolates that other body parts can be achieved.
So that means that you can live indefinitely then, if you can redo your heart, if you can redo your liver. After you killed it, you can redo it, and you'll be fine. That's pretty amazing.
To the point. And he doesn't stop there, because our first concept of this is going to the hospital and having some sort of surgery done, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has a concept of making a home kit that you can order on Amazon.
Really?
And it comes with, it's a box that Amazon sends out to you of molds and, ears and nose and what have you for, fingers. If you're a woodworker, you might need another finger. Or, if you're somebody that makes certain kind of films, you may want a different appendage, or, what have you. You can have this stuff in your refrigerator so that you can just take some stem cells and grow your own stuff.
Now, how do you code the stem cells to know what it is that they're growing?
Well, this is where Andrew Pelling makes it simple for us.
Oh,
Dr.
good for
Andrew
him.
Pelling and Eric Hall will not do it justice to explain it. However, I will say the engineered tissue interface, it already has a lining structural. So it's just a matter that the lining is already structurally made. So it's a matter of putting the tissues on there and the tissues grow into that structure. So it's pretty much like following directions on a Lego directional kit.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you can say, and he's serious about this.
He's serious.
Where did you read this from? Because I see you're reading something. Who published that?
Well, I first caught him on TED Talks, but then I went to his websites. His website, the Pelling Lab, and it's got a list of his publications because he's been printed just about everywhere. I mean, anywhere there's bioengineering or medical information, the guy's been published, and people take him seriously. And this guy, man, he's probably 35 at the most. But obviously he's not right in the head, as geniuses so often are not. And I say that with great compliment, because when I say he's not right in the head, he's sane, but he's just a different kind of guy, and he knows it. He's got a terrific sense of humor, and he knows that it's strange that somebody looks at some asparagus and sees a spinal cord, and the rest of us sees, hollandaise sauce. Exactly. So he knows he's a little bit out there. And when most of us see apple pie, we think of whipped cream or ice cream, and he thinks of human ears.
Yes.
So what'd she say?
This new discovery kind of brings new meaning to grow up there.
Yes. That's right.
So supposedly, given this new bit of information, you can confine and redo your body any way you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can create a pair, or you can create the trifecta and of any size, shape, and but then you have to do something with the old ones. So that of course, if it's but everything has a purpose, and it's bound to happen. It's bound to happen that it will work, and in 100 years we'll be saying, "Oh yeah, no, that's easy."
Well, the morality of this is interesting too, because we've all been horrified when we saw that mouse that was growing the ear on the back. The chimaras are something biblical, right? I think there's some mention of the goats.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
There was something about, I'm no expert on the Bible, but chimaras have been a point of discussion about morality. And chimaras don't have to be actually physically moving around. They can be existing in a petri dish, with 7 or 8 cells of pig and, 3 or 4 cells of human, and they are alive, and it's considered a chimara.
Oh, okay.
And that has some morality issues, because should we be doing that? Are we playing God? And I understand there's a gray area there. But since this is plant life, this kind of skirts the ground. I know this is where we have an interesting conversation with Quariel coming, because if plants do have souls, then we may not be skirting the issue like we think we are. And this brings us back to that conversation. If aliens want to eat us, aren't we just making the buffet table a little bit tastier?
Well, here's the other question: is at what point can we reproduce ourselves so that we can live our lives a lot longer? So that rather than getting lung cancer, you just replace the lung. It's, go to the lung shop and get a new one, or have a smoke there, boy. And but morally, is that something that we want to get into the world of?
Well, a lot of science fiction programs have said time is what defines the human experience. And if we don't have to deal with time, then the human experience is no longer defined by time. So we'd have to reevaluate what the human experience is and how we deal with the aspect of time. And that brings us back to, population control and our existence on other planets. And then, conquering, because we conquer.
Well, we do.
Yeah, existing on other planets. That changes our whole motivational aspect. And should we? Because we can.
Right. Should we? Well, and I have another theory about that, as to why we should not. Because
vegetables or exist for
a lot longer than we already do.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that you can change somebody's liver, you can give them a new heart, you can give them new lungs, but can you change their mind? Can they evolve into a more enlightened being, or are they? Let me give you an example. If there was somebody that was from the South, they're in their 50s now, and they get a new lungs, they get new heart, and they live to be 150 years old, but they've been bigoted their entire life and they've been racist most of that. That means that individual is going to continue to vote for 150 years as a racist motherfucker. Excuse me. Son of a bitch, and that's not really going to move the species forward. You follow what I'm saying, there, son?
I think I do. And that's why we have to keep ourselves open to what defines us as humans. Because would they change their mind? I think it was MASH. Do you remember MASH, where they had the episode where they did a transfusion on a guy from the South with a white guy from the South with some black guy's blood, and they put shoe polish on this guy and turned him, because he said up front, I don't want black blood in me. Don't put his blood in me. And they put blood in him to save his life. And he woke up with,
Yes, indeed.
He was humble, and he was humbled by it, and he sort of changed his mind. But he might be unique, and it makes a better story.
It does. He's not going to go home and talk to his mama. I got black blood in me now, mama. Let's have some chilling.
She might disown him.
Yeah, but see, so if we're not prepared to evolve and to change and to grow and to utilize the gifts that God gave us and move forward, and we're going to be stuck with the same. So I have no people that are 90 years old, haven't changed a bit in forever, and I don't want them to live to be 150 years old, because all that's going to do is defeat positive change. And at least in my humble opinion.
You got a good point.
So, but on the other hand, taking a cucumber and making that would be fun to watch anyway.
See, there's a whole new sect for movies there. The Attack of the Tomatoes.
There is a movie called The Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
I know. Yeah, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, one of the great movies of all time.
Speaking of great movies and stuff in the news about UFOs and stuff, did you see the pictures did you look it up and look at the pictures from this week?
Yeah, the pyramids yeah, wow. And it was on Fox News.
I know.
That's the one I watched on Fox News, of all places.
It was pretty amazing. Then, and did you see the one of the UFO that went into the water?
That one I missed.
It went into the water and did not come back up. Which I'm still a firm believer since, and I looked this up, 95% of the world's oceans have not been explored.
Man, that is a huge number.
95%. So I propose this to you, sir. If you have somebody that can go at light speed and it'd have to be actually a lot, because light speed, it still takes 400 years to go to the next star, and that's if at light speed. So it needs to be like warp 7 or warp 10 or whatever it would be. If these structures are able to withstand that kind of pressure and to move that fast, well, they could be underwater. They could have a civilization under there that we would never know about.
Yeah, they could, couldn't they?
Yeah, since 95% of the oceans have yet to be explored, and we can't explore them because we don't have the technology to get down there and to be able to look wide enough. They looked at the Mariana Trench, and which is as deep as they've ever gone, which is about 13,000 feet. But they only could stay for a very short period of time, and for just a few, and just look at a few things. So, I think I think that, and it would make perfect sense. I mean, that they were here, they wouldn't want to bother us, and so, but they wanted to
Those
keep an
people
eye on
are
us.
stressed enough.
Yeah, that's right. Those people have got enough problems. They don't need more of us. But now they're talking about this the spaceship that we have developed that can get out of our atmosphere. And because it's out of our atmosphere, the noise level and the background noise level is a lot less, and they can point it at far away stars, and they think they can prove within the next 10 years that there is or there isn't life on other planets.
Well, that's exciting. We might still be around for that.
We might, since I'm going to live to be 150. I've decided.
Yeah, you can order some cucumbers and asparagus, man.
Well, you wonder, because the lungs are kind of a big item. What would you cut into a lung?
I don't know, maybe a pumpkin, because it's got those
there you go.
veins and stuff, and you're going to need veins and little membranes, Yeah, just get a big pumpkin. Maybe that's why, Charlie Brown and Lucy and those Linus celebrated the Great Pumpkin. Maybe they knew something.
Apparently they did. That was Charles Schultz.
Yeah, Charles Schultz. He's a brilliant man.
He certainly was. And so in the last couple of weeks, we've discovered that Charles Schultz is a visionary, as is Gene Roddenberry.
Whew. Who would have guessed,
I know.
Who would have guessed?
It's pretty amazing. And we've been together. It's been an hour again, sir.
God damn. I guess so. It was so quick. It doesn't feel like we covered everything yet, but I guess we did, didn't we?
Do we have more to cover? What have we got to cover yet?
Well, I guess we did. Wow.
Well, I just got to tell you, it's just a lot of fun to keep up with current events and stuff, and fortunately, we didn't have any riots on last night, and we didn't have. I don't think we did we?
No riots. People were in the streets celebrating, chanting George Floyd's name and, hugging each other and congratulating each other. It was a good night. Oh, that was fast. I hope you don't say that too often.
That's what my ex-wife says. But that's a story for another time.
That's right. What a relief. It just shows how screwed up things were, that we were worried about the outcome. Even
Yeah.
with the preponderance of facts on this case, there's just no question.
I couldn't agree more. I was sitting there waiting for the verdict yesterday, and I was like, why am I concerned about this? I mean, to me, that was as obvious as as anything, and they came back in such a short time that because they were only out 10 hours. And by the way, I'm sorry that you didn't get to go to your jury duty. Did they cancel you?
No, actually, because I'm on vacation this week.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a little segment where you can put in, I'm on vacation. Don't screw me up.
Oh,
And they'll say, okay, well, pick a week you can come back. So I picked June 7th, and now it's mandatory that I show up, that's fine because I've never done jury duty. I'm looking forward to participating in the process. So I'll be there on
it's
June
a, it's
7th.
it's a fascinating process to watch and
Good.
to be part of. I've been part of, like I told you, I've been part of one jury, and it's fascinating to watch how 12 strangers over a period of what were we together, about a week and a half, 2 weeks, that
Wow.
we everybody either comes together or they develop into factions. We don't believe in that, and so it's interesting. The people dynamics is really interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. I'm going to put together a Star Trek uniform and make sure that I use the principles of the Starfleet to adhere to my views on our system.
Now, having said that,
Yes.
what's liable to happen for you, because I've been on jury duty like 4 times, and I've
Wow.
made it to one jury. Because what ends up
Wow.
happening is
Yeah.
you get in there, you're in a room with about 250 people. If it's
Damn.
downtown or if it's Kent, I don't know about Bellevue. It's a lot smaller. But you're in a room with about 250 people, and it depends upon when they decide to seat the jury for different trials that they have going on at that moment. And when they decide to, and sometimes there's a delay and then they don't seat it for several days, and then so you never get to be part of that one. But sometimes what they'll do is the court sends word that they want to commence with jury selection. And so they'll pick 50 people out of the 250.
God.
And those 50 people go into the room and they sit there, and then they pick 12 who are the primary people, and everybody else just sits there. And then the lawyers get to ask one by one, they get to ask those individuals questions and decide whether or not they're going to allow them to sit on the jury. And so sometimes they'll kick them off, and then number 13, so it becomes like 2 to 13 or whatever it is. And then there's a couple alternates after that. So you would sit there literally all day and probably into the next day, while they're picking the jury.
God
And,
damn.
and then of course you have the opening statements, and you have no idea it's really kind of weird because you have no earthly idea what's going to happen and what the case is about or anything about it. The only thing that you know is it's either going to be civil or criminal, and but you don't know any of the particulars. They keep all that stuff from you. You get to go when the lawyers are, like in the courtroom dramas, when the defense lawyer is and the prosecutor, can we approach the bench, your honor? A lot of times they kick us out before they do that, so we don't get to
Oh,
see anything that they don't want you to see. And so
wow.
you're stuck in that room, and then you have to make a decision and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. You'll have a good time. You'll have a good time with
I'm looking forward to it, strangely. I want to go home at night. I hope they, don't keep me there overnight.
it. Most of them are not that. Most of them don't sequester.
Okay.
The only ones that do are if they're high publicity, and there's a lot of attention paid to it.
Mm.
So and then see what you could do then. See, as you go and then you come talk to us about what you did in the jury that day, and then we'll send that to the court, and they'll put you in jail, and they'll shoot me. So,
but that would be an interesting podcast.
It surely would. It surely would. Well, young man, I appreciate you. It's been great fun, and you're going to come up with new things for next week. Yes.
Yes, I'm looking forward to next week as well.
What are you going to come up
things in mind? Well, we should talk about the Asians next. The growing violence against Asians. That's interesting. That's one of those trickle down that I've been talking about, because there's a lot of movement to protect them, both on their own systems. They're having programs built where they can escort elderly people around, because there's been a number of elderly people that have been attacked by young white males, which is interesting. I mean, we're talking 13, 14-year-olds beating up 80, 90-year-old Asian people, both men and women. 9-year-old woman got beat up by a 13-year-old kid here recently, and a cat. 13-year-old kid, lady was out walking her dog and her 2 cats, and the kid took the cat and took the leash of the cat and slammed the cat on the ground. Yeah.
Was that around where we live?
This was in New York.
Oh, okay. Well, thank God it didn't happen here, but it happened in. That's just
because she's Asian. Yeah,
we are living in a really destructive time,
aren't we? Though. Bye, Paulette. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks, Paulette. Do you realize that there have been 48 mass shootings in the last 30 days?
48
in the last 30 days.
God. See, if we had more guns, if we would just arm our guns with guns, we wouldn't have a gun problem.
Really?
That's the beauty of the NRA. That's the logic of the NRA. Because, more toddlers kill their parents with guns than people with guns kill people.
Well, and it also has driven the suicide rate through the roof.
That's right.
So we'll discuss that next time.
That's a worthy discussion. It's a worthy discussion.
On behalf of Eric Hall, he is the Transient. My name is Kevin McDonald, and I hope that you guys, it's a beautiful day here in the Northwest. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are. Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independence Report.